Well, I am really excited to introduce Danny. The program today is on a woman's place, our domestic violence shelter in our community. You know, when people say, you know, what is one of the things you're the most proud of? Well, for me, it's helping start a woman's place. Way, way, way back when I was very young. And we started as the Battered Women Task Force, and then a few years later, became a woman's place. And I'm going to tell you a little story that most people don't know. You may not even know. So we were meeting as a task force, trying to decide what the name should be of this new organization. And we knew our plan was to get money so we could build a shelter, and all of that did happen. Now, this was in the 70s. And someone said, well, you know, these women are going to go through a change. Why do we call it metamorphosis? Can you imagine if we would call that metamorphosis? You know what that is, right? You move from a caterpillar to a butterfly, right? We decided that would not be a good name, but it fit right in with the 70s. Yes, it did. And so we came up with the woman's place. And there are at least 2 people in this room right now who served on the board for Women's Place in the past, Bonnie Dean being one and Anita Hout being another. Was there anybody else here who served on that board? Okay, so we appreciate all that they have done. And so now I'm really pleased to introduce Danny Souza to you. Danny has been with the agency since May. She's a graduate at Ames and she's a current student at UNC.
Hello. So like she said, my name is Danny and I am a little bit newer to a woman's place. I started in May as an advocate and I worked in the safe house. So I worked the night shift and I had interactions with all the residents that would come in and seek shelter. So it was very rewarding starting off like that because I was able to kind of see firsthand how it worked, because we are a shelter, obviously, for domestic violence. We're the only one in Weld County. So that means a lot. Larimer County, Boulder, they've all got their own, but Weld County is just us. This year's our 45th anniversary. So 45 years ago is kind of when it started. We were talking about that with Jean. When the house was built was about 1981, but it was started in 1977. So this year is going to be a big year for us, trying to highlight our 45th and trying to get a lot more attention from the community about the 45th anniversary. Right now, the safe house can hold, we have 8 bedrooms that we fill. We used to be able to fit about 28 people in the safe house, but COVID limited that. So now we're at 8 beds or 8 rooms. So if there's a family, they share a room. And right now we do have families that come in during the holidays. So we've had a lot of people in and out, especially over the holidays. Domestic violence does escalate a little bit. So the shelter, aside from being a safe haven, we also have outside residency programs, legal advocacy, employment, and housing. So even if they exit the program or they don't need to seek shelter with us, we can still help them with resources. Legal, she's not a lawyer, but she can help them fill out paperwork, protection orders. We have a housing advocate who can help get people into rapid housing. We can help with certain deposits if there's grant money. So it just depends on the situation. So we also have outside services. And then there's my position where I go out to the community and we talk about domestic violence. I visit a lot of different clubs. I visit schools. One of my favorite things to do is talk to the students about teen dating violence, because they do get a lot of, they have a lot of questions and they interact a lot with us because it's not talked about at that level and they don't really think about dating violence. So that is a big thing. February, we're going to talk about teen dating violence the entire month. So this entire year, I'm going to try to focus on how to get the community involved the most. So if anyone has ideas or if you want us to come do more presentations or anything like that, definitely let me know. We can customize presentations for anything. When it comes to domestic violence, a lot of people just go straight to physical abuse. They don't always think about the different forms of abuse. And especially when I go to the high school, as I ask them, hey, what do you think domestic violence is? And they instantly just say, well, it's punching or it's hitting or it's kicking. They never think deeper into it. And there's many forms of abuse. Aside from physical, there's psychological, emotional, financial, reproductive, economic, All of these are different forms of abuse. Stalking is another form of abuse. 1 in 6 women say they've been stalked by an intimate partner during their abusive cycle. And about every 20 minutes, someone is being abused in one way or form by an intimate partner. When it comes to domestic abuse in Colorado, it is anyone that you've been intimate with currently or in the past. At a federal level, it's anyone you live with. So sometimes we get confusion when people call in if they are having a domestic violence dispute with their parents or somebody they live with. We don't really service that. We service intimate partner violence. So somebody you've been intimate with, a co-parent, an ex, a current, those are the people that we can have come into the shelter. So sometimes that's a question that we get. Another question is, do we just take women because of the name of Women's Place? We are inclusive, so anybody suffering from domestic violence, because it does not discriminate, it can happen anywhere. We are a safe haven for them. So that is one thing to know if you are kind of passing on the word about our services, is we do accept everybody suffering from domestic violence. Like I said, we used to have about 28 beds, and those would be constantly full. Right now, we're down to 8 because of COVID. So when people call in, if they're having a situation, or even if they just have questions, our phones are 24/7. So someone can call in and they can just ask simple questions. We can help talk them through safety planning. They can ask questions. Was this abusive behavior? We're not going to give them advice, but we are going to kind of advocate for them. We're going to give them the resources. We're going to tell them, well, here's forms of abuse. Do you feel like one of those is going on? Okay, let's talk some more about it. Or they'll call and just say, I left, I need a safe place to go. So we talk to them on the phone for about 15 minutes and we get information about the situation and what's going on. We want to make sure they're somewhere safe and they're not being listened to. We want to make sure that they have a way to get to us, because we are a confidential location. We wait until we know they're leaving to give them the address of where to come, because we want to make sure that they're not being followed or that somebody didn't hear. So once we talk to them on the phone and we go over a screening to see what happened, to see if we're the best program for them, we'll bring them in and we'll do an intake process. It takes about an hour depending on the situation, depending on if there's kids involved. But what we do is we go a little bit deeper into the situations with them. And then we talk about their goals, their wishes, their wants, and their needs. A lot of people will just come in and they don't always have all the clothes or all the hygiene products that they need. Sometimes they don't have a phone charger because that's not something that they're thinking about at the moment. When they're wanting to leave, they're not thinking, oh, I need to grab 5 outfits and a phone charger and all this. It's more, let's just go. So we want to make sure, do you need clothes now? Do you need hygiene products now? What can we do? If there's kids, we always make sure they get toys, coloring books, stuffed animals, blankets. We just want to make them feel at home as best we can, considering the situation, because yes, it is a safe house, but it is still communal living. So sometimes it makes it hard. It's not all warm and cozy all the time because we're still in masks. We do abide by COVID rules pretty hardcore, because if somebody gets sick in the safe house, we have to quarantine them for 2 weeks in the room. Nobody wants to be stuck in their room for 2 weeks. We have to get food delivered for them, make the breakfasts. And it puts a lot of strain on the advocates because we have to make sure that those individuals don't come into contact with other people and get them sick. If we have advocates start getting out, then we have people fill in. But since we're 24/7, we always have to have somebody there. So we're pretty strict with COVID, which is why our bed limit has gone down. But if we can't service somebody, say we don't have a bed for them, or it's a different kind of domestic abuse with like family or relatives, or we feel that we're not going to be the best program for them, we're going to get them the resources and probably transportation to where it's to go. So whether it's another safe house or alternatives to violence or a homeless shelter, we're going to get them where they need to go. We're not just going to leave them. No, we can't service you. We're going to make sure that we take them where they work at service. Our program is a self-sufficiency program. So when they come in, we talk about their goals to see what they need, see if they need identification, because sometimes the abusers have stolen their identification, and to make it harder for them to get a job or to get certain things. They take their IDs, they take their social security cards, and in order to get a job, you need those back. So we do a lot of that for individuals where we're getting their identification, we're ordering it for them so that they can get a job. So we help them apply for jobs. We help them fill out a resume. We can help them get into housing. We don't do these things for them because we want to make sure they understand how to kind of take back control of their lives, because they've lost control for so long that we have to make sure that they can kind of gain control. We don't want them to exit the program and just have not made any progress, because then we worry they go back to the abuser. And it does take an average of 8 times for a victim to leave. And it's because of all the different barriers that people may not notice. When it comes to barriers of abuse, people may not leave for a lot of different reasons. It could be because of money. Maybe they don't have any of their own money. They're given an allowance, so they don't have any way to just leave because they don't have any money. Maybe it's communication. They don't know English and they have been secluded, where the only people who may speak their language, if it's a rare language, is going to be the group with their abuser. So then they don't know where to go because they don't know how to have the resources for translation. Translation's a hard thing to get depending on the language. We work with a translation service that has access to just all the languages, but it's still hard. And a lot of places don't work with language services. So these individuals feel kind of alone because they don't know how to get help because they can't communicate properly. Some of it's religion, cultural, in a marriage, we don't leave even if it's abusive. So there's a lot of barriers. Threats happen. If you leave, I'll take the children. That happens a lot. People use children against each other. So that's why it takes about 8 times, is because there's so many different reasons somebody may not leave. It's not as easy as just walking out. They may be more scared. They may not have anyone to talk to. Isolation, they may not have any family or friends to talk to anymore, because the isolation takes a long time to happen and you don't always notice it's happened. But all of a sudden you realize you can't talk to your friends or family about the abuse because maybe in the past they've told you that that's not a good guy. She's not right for you. I worry they have anger issues. Maybe you've deflected them talking about this in the past that you don't feel comfortable telling people anymore. So then you don't have anyone to talk to. Where are you going to go? So that's a big thing that we do on our crisis line, is we try to have people, even if it's just a question, we want to hear from people because we want to give them the resources, the information, anything that can maybe keep them a little bit safer. When we go out and talk to the public and I bring material like I did today, the point of all the material is maybe just hold on to it because you may come across somebody one day who you think may need it. If that happens, if you come into contact with a survivor, there's many things that you can say, but you have to be careful how you say it because you don't want them to think that you're diving into their personal life. They may close up and not want to talk to you. The best thing that you can do if you feel someone may be suffering is just ask them, what can I do for you? Is there anything specifically I can do to make today better, to make you feel safer? Those are questions we ask a lot to the survivors in the safe houses. What can we do to make you feel safer? What can we do today to make it a good day? Just simple stuff, because a lot of the time they're not being asked about their self-care or their well-being. They're so busy being controlled or walking on eggshells that nobody really asks them how their day is or what they can do for them. So it's important to just be there and support them, but understand that you can't change somebody's mind. You can't tell somebody to leave and expect them to leave because, again, you don't know all the barriers that are going on when it comes to that personal situation. A couple of statistics that I just find interesting because a lot of people, again, don't always look this deep into it. 1 out of 15 kids has been around a situation of abuse. So when we get a call and we find out a child's in the home, 90% of the time the kid has witnessed the abuse. Other times the kid's in a different room, so people don't think it's that big of a deal. Oh, the kid was upstairs when we were screaming, arguing, he didn't hear anything. Well, we have to file a CPS report because we're mandated reporters. Anytime a child's in the house when an abusive act happens, it is considered child abuse. So we do contact CPS and we have to file a report because those kids are obviously what we want to make sure they're safe. So if we know they've been in the household, we do file it, because when kids have grown up in a household with abuse, they're more likely to be abused or to become abusive because they're wired. They just grew up seeing it. So to them, it's normal. It's not weird behavior to scream at each other, to hit walls, to throw cell phones, to go through cell phones. It's just normal. So, even if they're not witnessing it with their own eyes, they can hear it. They can feel what's going on. They have an idea that something's not right. So kids, they're about 15 times higher if they're in that household to become abused or to be abusive. One thing about relationship, sometimes when it does become an abusive relationship, it can go both ways. Because the victim and survivor, they may become on defense. So then all of a sudden they'll be doing the behavior back. And it's not to say that they're both abusive, but now the behavior is learned. So it's a way to, one, to keep control, and then to just be safe. I'm just going to do what he says because it'll keep me safe. I won't get yelled at. I won't get hit. I don't have to, I want to walk on eggshells because I don't want an abrupt thing to happen. When it comes to the cycle of abuse, everybody knows it starts off great. Nobody goes into a relationship thinking this is an abusive relationship, I'm going to stay in it. Usually it's great. It's honeymoon. There's not a lot of signs about abuse, but then you start noticing it. You notice certain triggers, you notice acts. If you do something, gets them upset. If you wear something specific, they don't like it. You start noticing that. And then all of a sudden they'll go into a big explosion. So whether it's a physical act or an argument that goes overboard, the big explosion happens. And then there's usually apologies, there's gifts, there's flowers, there's promises of change, and it goes back. And I always call it like the recycle symbol, is it kind of just goes back about that 8 times before they're able to finally break free of that control. Which, I mean, thinking 8 times when it's like, it's almost a habit to them because they're so used to it that being in control of their own lives almost seems foreign. And we hear that a lot from survivors, is it's just so hard because no one taught them how to do this. No one taught them how to pay bills or to get a job. A lot of them, they weren't allowed to get jobs because then if they had money, they may leave, and the abuser doesn't want that. The abuser wants them to stay there with them in full control over them. So a lot of individuals who are in the shelter have trouble getting jobs because they can't find the transportation or the childcare. They've got to be able to find childcare, but if they don't have a job, how are they going to pay for childcare? Well, lovely that, there's programs that'll help, but you have to apply for the programs. And anyone who tries to apply for county programs understands it's not that easy. It's not just a quick application online. It's a lot of different paperwork to just get food stamps, to get Medicaid, to get CCAP. It's a lot of different steps. And unless you have somebody who can help advocate and walk you through it, it's really scary. So we make sure that we can do that, because when kids are involved, they're our main priority, because we need to make sure that behavior stops. We don't want them to then continue later and still think it's appropriate behavior, even though they spent maybe a month in a safe house with their parent. We are a 30-day program because we hope within that time frame we've been able to give them all the resources to at least get them back on their feet. There are times that we do extend that depending on the circumstance. If the systems are kind of working against the survivors, the county systems, anything like that, we like to evaluate it every week and then decide what else can we do? Can we get them somewhere else? Is it more resources that they need? And if they need to stay a little bit longer, they can. Some people just come for a night. Some people stay for a couple weeks. Again, every situation is just different when it comes to domestic violence. So the shelter is huge. The 45th anniversary is huge because it means for 45 years, we've been helping survivors gain back control of their lives. And we've been going to the community talking about domestic violence. Domestic violence wasn't talked about when I was in high school, and that wasn't that long ago, but it still wasn't talked about. It was kind of foreign and nobody talked about domestic abuse. I mean, I don't even remember hearing it talked about with my parents. I remember seeing it on TV shows, but it was just a TV show. So the big thing is to kind of be aware that it is a huge problem that's going on, and a lot of it is hidden. People don't always see it. Victims of abuse, it costs the economy about $8 billion a year for people suffering from domestic violence. It loses about 8.6 million days of work for everyone suffering from domestic violence. So businesses suffer because they're missing work, their productivity is down, they're filing health claims. So there's an economic impact to domestic violence as well. So there's a lot of factors, a lot to learn when it comes to domestic violence, but we are kind of a hub for that. We can give any information that's needed, and we're here to help any way we can for those survivors. So do we have some questions, comments?
How many contacts do you get in a week or a month?
Contacts as in survivors calling? Yeah, so last year we had 949 crisis calls, and about 400 residents that we served in the safe house as well as with the advocacy services. So I would say on average about 800 to 1,000 calls a year, crisis calls that we receive.
You work with other organizations such as Saba?
We have worked with Saba, so different organizations, we do partner with them at times. We've done tabling events with Saba. I see them a lot when we do stuff at the schools, like at Ames, when we go out, Saba is always there with us. So we do work with different organizations. We host a cornhole tournament in the summer that we work with Saba on. So we partner with them on that one. So sexual assault. Now I forgot. Victims advocacy. For a minute, I'm like, oh gosh, I can't remember. So yes, we do work with Saba. Yeah.
Just add a couple.
Oh, yeah.
Just wanted to add a couple things. When this all started many, many years ago, we were all volunteers. We had no money to be able to have any staff or anything. We were able to get urban renewal block grant dollars to the city of Greeley. And at that point, then we actually were, with the urban renewal monies, they actually moved a 3-story house from 6th Street, where the senior center is now, to the current location. And someone who had lived in that house way back when was Carolyn Gaddis's, was it grandmother?
I think that's right.
It was her grandmother, great grandmother, who lived in the house that was on 6th Street. And then John Anderson and his construction company was hired to actually then move the house. There are all kinds of pictures in the Tribune, because at that point they had to take down, telephone lines and everything. This was a huge house to move. And then later, trying to get it to be larger, it was doubled in size. Anita was very involved with that. And Bob Shreve was the architect. And he amazingly took that shelter and sort of doubled it, making it look, he took one side and the other side then looked just like it. It was just incredible what he did. So there have been a lot of people in this community involved. In fact, initially, way back when, in 1980, when it was being built and then we were furnishing it, people were donating things to us. An organization gave us a washer and dryer. Somebody else gave us, some furniture that they no longer needed. It was totally furnished through donations. And amazingly, I even made the curtains for the kitchen, which is amazing because I don't really sew much, but it's true, I did. So many people were involved, but we realized that we needed more money. We had some money from grants, we had some money from United Way, but we needed more. So then we started Friends of a Woman's Place. And we are the fundraising arm of a Woman's Place. And many of us who were involved with Friends used to be on the board of a Woman's Place. So every year, the Friends puts on the Celebrating Women Gala in October, because that's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so because we want people to be more aware of domestic violence, we also want to honor women in the community. So we honor 6 women in the community each year. We've been doing this now for about 25 years. And you'll be proud to know that you have many fellow Rotarians who have been honored, such as Bonnie Dean, Anita Howe, Glenda Haynes, Colette Pitcher, Kim Larson. Amazing, got an amazing group. So, so that happens every year. And when Donnie was talking about the fact, or Danny, excuse me, talking about the fact that people didn't really understand domestic violence, way back when we were starting this in the late 70s, we would go out and give talks about it. And in fact, there was a movie that we would show. It was called Behind Closed Doors. Because at that point, domestic violence was basically behind closed doors. And people really didn't talk about it. So one of the things we wanted to do was get it more out in the open so that people would know about it, and that if they were victimized, they would know that it was okay to make a phone call and try to get some help. You know, you've heard of the term a rule of thumb? You know where that comes from? It was okay to beat someone as long as the stick was no larger than your thumb. Interesting. I've learned a lot through all this. Anyway, I just wanted to add those few things, and so I'm so appreciative of what the city of Greeley has done and the county, because they helped with funding too. And really, this whole community was like a grassroots effort, because it just came from volunteers and went up from there. So that's some of your history.
Thank you. No, that's the kind of stuff I don't know. Obviously, I wasn't around that long. I do know that in 1970, give or take, the definition of domestic violence is the definition of battered woman syndrome, was any woman could be abused once, but if it happened twice, then it was an abusive relationship. That's how they determined domestic violence, and it was in the 1970s.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, of course, Jean has always been a beautiful spokesperson for this cause. But Danny, wonderful job today.
Thank you.
For being there a short time, you certainly speak well and gave us a lot of information. But my question is, 28 beds to 8 beds, that's huge. That's like 2 sevens. So, is there any plans to expand capacity, or is it just enough of talent to keep what you got running? Or do you think that you'll ever just change the COVID rules because you need to help more people?
No, that's a good question, because the occupancy people worry. They say, well, then are you turning a lot of people away? I haven't noticed that a lot of people are getting turned away. But it has been hard because we could fit individuals, multiple individuals in one room, same-sex individuals, we could fit a couple. Now it's just one taking up a room that's got 4 beds. We will ease up on the COVID policy. I think after a while, our biggest fear is just because of the amount of people that come and go. Anything can kind of happen. So even if it's not COVID, but say if the flu breaks out in the safe house, it can, each person has their own health issues or anything like that. So we do have to be careful. I know there are some safe houses that have got rid of the masks. It's been talked about. I don't know when it'll end. As to the house, I know there are plans to get a bigger house, kind of an updated house, which will be great. I think they're kind of working on all that now. We're not sure of all the details, but in the future, there will be an updated house, I believe, to have a bit more rooms, just a bit newer and kind of have more room for storage, because we do get a lot of donations and we're kind of popping at the seams at the house just because we don't have a bunch of storage, but we get so many donations in. So it'd be nice to kind of have more room.
Do most of the women bring children?
Yes. So I'd say yes and no. We have women that come in that do have children, but sometimes they don't have the children. The children are still with the abuser, or they do have all the children. We've had dads come in with children before because they've had full custody of the kids. So we do get a fair share of kids, and we work a lot with families in transition to make sure the kids are in school and they have all the school stuff they need. We have clinics to make sure they're up to date on everything. So we do get a lot of kids in the shelter.
Stay in the same room.
Yeah. So even if there's 5 kids and a mom, they're all in one room. And I think the smallest rooms have 2 beds. One of them's an ADA room and it's got a bed and a crib. And then the ones upstairs, each of them have about 4 to 6 beds inside of them. So there are a lot of beds. Yeah. But it would be hard to be in a room that long with your family.
Sorry, don't interrupt. I just want to, this Rotary and the participants in the Rotary family have done so much. When we doubled the size, now obviously keeping the body and starting this thing is amazing. But when we were planning on doubling the size of it, Tony Shield had a tea at her house. And I think we raised something like $36,000 that afternoon with that tea. And Tony's one of our Rotary families. So there's so many. And then we had an adopter room, and there were Rotarians who adopted a room to put brand new beds and brand new furniture. So from just kind of put together whatever they had furniture, this brand new place that Bob did so well designed. Everything was new and fresh the day we opened that again. So thanks, Bonnie, and thanks for sharing.
Yeah, because no one.
Seems like the community is much more aware of domestic abuse. I know a couple of years ago, I got up in the middle of the night to let the dog out, fell over the dog and hit my lip on the dresser and split it open, had to go to the ER, and they were very concerned.
Mhm.
Do you feel safe?
Mhm.
Are you okay at home? And I'm like, I'm clumsy, I'm, I'm great,
If you arrest your dog.
Anyway, but it was definitely one of those, I appreciated it very much. I thought, I'm glad that they asked. It certainly didn't apply, but I thought it's really a change in the right direction. Do you work, do you get referrals from emergency rooms or, I don't know, other organizations maybe that are asking those questions?
Yep, so we do, hospitals, doctors' offices, we do get a lot of referrals. Some mental health facilities will call us too. So if they have somebody there that they think needs shelter, they will give us a call. We have to talk to the survivor specifically. We can't talk to the individual through the survivor just for confidentiality. But we do work with hospitals will call us a lot. Someone will be in there because of a domestic violence act and they'll say, hey, they need a place. Can you talk to them? So we do have a lot of the Greeley PD I know works with us a lot, aside from being close to where we are at the safe house, and they're always there just because we get a lot of weird people that kind of wander by. Greeley's great when it comes to the domestic violence because they're very involved with us. They're always calling to ask for more information. The hospitals are always wanting brochures. So I think people want to talk about it, but people don't always know where to start because it's still kind of a taboo subject. And a lot of people don't really realize that men can be abused too. And that's a big thing that I notice right now is a lot of all the donations we get, which are great, but they're women and kids. We do have quite a few men that come in as well as inclusive. So LGBTQ, we have a lot of that as well. So that's the biggest part I think trying to get across to people right now is it's not always just women that are suffering from it. But yes, with the hospitals and the police department, we work a lot with.
So it would seem to me that the two messages that are the most important to get into the potential, the two most important messages to the potential populations from where your residents come is for you in this kind of a situation, here's what to do about it. Because you have to get that recognition that this is not just, as you said earlier in your speech. Can you talk a little more about that? And how can this group and others help with that?
Okay, so let me make sure I understand. So how we can help the survivors understand that it is in fact an abusive situation and it's maybe not them overthinking it. Is that what you're kind of meaning?
Right.
How to have them realize that, yes, I am in an unhealthy relationship. That's hard because it's going to be each individual person's going to want to hear what they want to hear, but a lot of affirming statements, even a lot of this isn't your fault that it's going on. That's the biggest part is we just constantly remind them, this is not your fault that it happened. This can happen to anybody. It's not just you. Other people have survived this. You will survive this, but it's the affirmation that they want because no one's giving them affirmation about their feelings. Nobody has asked them what their feelings are and they're probably terrified. So if you say, yes, this is an unhealthy relationship, you're valid in thinking that you need to get out. Here's what we can do. So it's the biggest thing is they just need affirmation that it's not in their head that yes, this is unhealthy and that they don't deserve to go through it, nor is it their fault. It's not their fault what happened to them. Their emotions are their own, but somebody else has taken full control of their emotions. So just affirmation.
What is it that touched your heart and got you into this? This is pretty intense work that you're involved in.
Yes, it is. Aside from my love of going out and talking about things that people don't want to talk about, I think it's important to go out and discuss the things that are a little bit taboo. It's personal experience when it comes to domestic violence that kind of woke me up about it. Understanding it more brought a lot of realizations about it and it hit home a lot harder because before it was what I saw in Lifetime movies or what I saw on Law and Order. It wasn't real life because nobody talked about it. So I think that's my biggest reason to do it is because somebody's got to talk about these things And if you can bring a little bit of light to it and not make people feel so icky and yucky and dark when they talk about it, it's important. So. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Do we have any questions from our Zoomers today? Not sure who else is on there. Marlon's on there. No questions on Zoom? All right, perfect. Well, thank you very much
Thank
for your
you.
program today. Jean, thank you very much for bringing her and there's programs or little flyers on each table. And as a thank you, Danny, for coming today, we would like to donate this to a woman's place.
Wonderful.
And
Thank you
well, let
so
me read
much.
the.
Oh, yeah.
real quick. So it says, this stuffed animal wants to help you when things are hard. Snuggle with it and you will feel a little love and caring. This comfort animal is given to you by Greeley Centennial Rotary in honor of a woman's place who was our presenter with today's date. And on the back is our 4-way test.
Oh,
So
that's wonderful.
I'm sure that there's
Yes.
somebody there that needs
There
a little
is.
snuggle bear.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're
This is
welcome.
great.
Thank you very much.